morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, July 12th, 2016. And this is Before the First Cup of Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Tuesday, everyone. It is 74 degrees and very overcast here in upstate New York. Looks like it's going to rain any minute, but that's okay because it's been kind of dry here this July. So where do we leave off a week ago? Yes, I did take a little vacation. I don't know, you know how it is. I got offline for a couple days and then it was really difficult to force myself to come back and deal. So I took a couple days off, but it's good. We're back now. So where do we leave off a week ago? We titled the show 3D Bioprinted Internet of Things Control Grid. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at right about now. Over the last week, we saw some crazy stuff happening. We've been talking a lot about the brain and about manipulation of the brain, about them mimicking the brain, creating tunable DNA electronics that they could 3D print to make synapses to mimic a brain, them being able to quantify your emotions and read your thoughts and be able to identify you by not only your facial recognition, which we're going to look at some of that, not only your voice patterns, but also by your behaviors, and then to be able to diagnose you and cure you of what ails you based upon this artificial intelligence that they are rolling out across the board to be our control grid. We ended the show on the 1st, if you can even believe it. It doesn't seem like that long, but I guess it was. It was 11 days ago. We ended the show talking about a few different things. There was the text messaging study that they have now discovered that it messes with your brain rhythms to text message. They put those ECG caps on a bunch of people and took a look at what happened, and it basically causes something that they did not expect in the spiking of the frequencies in the brain. And they're like, wow, you know, we didn't research any of this. We didn't know how this was going to interact with people. And this is doing some damage. And we've spent a lot of time looking at the different effects of these devices and the effects these devices have had on especially the human attention span, but also on mental illness and dopamine addiction, and that being able to get you to chase that dangling dopamine carrot that leads you, and they lead us from a psychological perspective on a daily basis. They use the mass media to sway our opinion, and we have never, I don't believe, been in more of a mire than right now between these elections and the false flags and all of the fear that's being pumped out, the social division, the stirring of the pot, trying to cause a complete destruction of Western civilization, to put us into absolute chaos. So, of course, problem reaction solution, they could step right in with their 21st century control grids and medicine and miraculous cures that they've been spinning up and dumping all of our taxpayer dollars into. Their universal basic income as the robots take all the jobs. We can all sit around and eat grapes and be guinea pigs for big pharma, but don't worry about it because the world will be grand. There will be no more violence because everyone will be diagnosed, bagged, and tagged, and you'll be able to live forever. So anyway, let's take a look here. So back to these the shootings over this last week or so. So we had 2 different police shootings. Not that there's anything different about that. We've been watching those for quite a number of years now. But then we had this attack in Dallas where 5 police officers were killed. And one of the things that I noticed is that they were talking about the guy's mental state. And as the story was playing out on mainstream media, I heard about 5 times in one day them talking about crazy people. Oh, crazy people with guns. Those crazy people get afraid, be very afraid. Because those crazy people, those crazy copycats are going to come out all over And, keep watching over your shoulder because if guns stay out there, we're going to have crazy people shooting it up. Well, another thing, of course, he was a veteran. We know that they've been trying to target veterans for a long time, veterans who were trained to use firearms, trained to kill things overseas. Not all of them, but some of them. Ones that they put them into situations that now, after they come back and they've been abandoned by their government and the healthcare system and the job market and everything else, those same veterans that now suffer from afflictions such as PTSD being put into these highly stressful, highly emotional situations that they'll never forget. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you've done it, you can't undo it. So they have become these wonderful guinea pigs for DARPA's BRAIN project, the BRAIN Initiative, which is now a federal initiative, to mess around with being able to push chemical buttons and manipulate chemicals within the brain to do things like get rid of fear, get rid of traumatic memories, control fear. So in the future on the battlefield, they'll be able to sense, detect, and manipulate those chemicals so those soldiers are not afraid anymore. We've read all kinds of stuff, not only direct manipulation of brain chemicals with these implants, and we saw those DNA nanowire implants that they've been working on already. We saw National Geographic show live brain surgery on TV. But now we're looking at indirect manipulation. We read stories about using gut bacteria. Remember the two mice, the one that was docile, or he was even more than docile. He was kind of timid. And then the other mouse, which was more aggressive in his personality. And they did a fecal transplant between those two mice. One had a certain type of bacteria that the other did not, that affected directly their personalities. And they were able to swap personalities in these mice. Do not think for 1 minute that this technology is not in the future going to be rolled out as a necessity, because there's so many lunatics out there running around, not only with guns, but lunatics out there trying to call bullshit on this fake narrative that not only the mass media, but the federal government that is funding the mass media, that is now legal to push propaganda out to the American people as of the NDAA 2013. Don't think that they aren't playing this psychopathic game called gaslighting on you, where they're going to give you falsehoods, maybe sprinkle a little bit of truth here and there, but they're going to give you falsehoods and then call you a lunatic when you try to call them out on their lies. There's a lot of us now. But I think eventually they have had such success in mass manipulating the public, tying them in with a dangling carrot to their devices, getting them to focus on the truths that they are pushing out, and then cause a reasonable doubt by writing stories like, oh, I don't know, hit pieces in Discover magazine that call out people by name and tell them that they're a tinfoil hat wearing lunatic. Websites like Snopes, don't believe Snopes ever, that try to discredit anyone who's trying to raise a question. I mean, it's not even gotten to the point where they're calling out people with complete lunacy theories. They're calling out people who are just trying to ask a question now as lunatics as well. And as they start getting these surveillance programs and they integrate artificial intelligence with the Internet of Things, which you and I are going to become endpoints on. And every cell in our body is going to be on that Internet of Things, monitored, surveilled, spliced, and diced. It's going to be very difficult to fight this mass psyop. I think we're going to illustrate some of that today. So, ran across this story probably a couple weeks ago. It's been sitting around, but I think we're going to kick off here just knowing now that we've kicked it into high gear for lunatics with guns, black versus white, Muslim versus Catholic, pro-life versus, I don't even think there's pro-life, gay versus not, LGBTQ versus straight. I mean, let's just keep dividing it up. Let's get everyone hating everybody. Everybody's suspicious of everyone. Zika mosquitoes and self-radicalized terrorists under every bed. That's two other things about that Dallas shooter. So not only was he a former vet from Afghanistan, but he also was a member of the Rod and Gun Club. I was like, oh, that's nice. And he also had issues with things the way they are going. That's a recipe for any of you see something, say something, people out there think you're going to get your Walmart gift certificate for turning in your neighbor because they belong to a Rod and Gun. He might be a lunatic. The FBI now has access to nearly 412 million photographs in its facial recognition system, perhaps including the one on your driver's license. And as it searches for suspects, those ones that were in the blurry footage running away from the last mass shooting, the FBI may be looking at you. But according to a new government watchdog report, the Bureau doesn't know how error-prone its system is or whether it enhances or hinders its investigations. Since 2011, the Bureau has quietly been using this system to compare new images, such as those taken from surveillance cameras, against a large set of photos to look for a match, and that exists and is not limited to the FBI's own database, which includes 30 million photos. The Bureau also has access to facial recognition systems used by law enforcement agencies in 16 different states, and it can tap into databases from who? Oh, the Department of State, Hillary Clinton's good old stomping grounds, with 18 other states able to have their databases searchable as well, and as well as the Department of Defense's database, which would include all of your military, I would assume. So, and then on top of all this, we also have Facebook and Google, probably anything that's been put onto an Android. We got all these applications online people can upload. And we have Google with his deep learning algorithm. Good old Kurzweil worked on a lot of that stuff, scanning through images and learning how to do things for artificial intelligence. This is frightening, guys. It is very frightening. Your face is in a database that is being scanned regardless of whether or not you've been guilty of anything. Regardless of whether or not you've done anything. 130-point facial recognition has already been around since I first started doing this. 2011, Madison Rupert wrote a story about it way, way, way back when. With these new high-tech scanning technologies. I thought one was out of China almost. That did bazillions of photos in a second. And be able to program them into a database so they could slice and dice every feature of your face, as well as recognizing recognizing marks like tattoos or birthmarks. But it's gotten even further than that. So, Facebook's recognition software, we've read about that a while ago. There was a story that came out in May 18th of 2016. It says, don't worry about facial recognition software. Anyone who uploads any pictures of themselves to Facebook, though I've done it once, maybe twice. Not planning on doing it again. Make sure you smear them. Do something. It's different from the FBI, so don't worry about that. They make sure they tell us that. It says every time one of Facebook's 1.65 billion users uploads a photo to Facebook and tags somebody, That person is helping Facebook's facial recognition algorithm. And that algorithm is able to accurately identify a person 98% of the time. So, people out there take pictures of you in an event, and then they upload that picture to a social media platform without your knowledge. Like, I freaking hate. I've told all my friends and family, do not upload pictures of me, my family, anybody that is involved with me directly. I don't want to see on Facebook. It's not because I'm an asshole. It's because I don't want to feed the machine. The more angles they get, the better they will get at recognizing you. And they have cameras on every lamppost, traffic light, grocery store. Don't think that the majority of that stuff isn't connected. I just had a friend this weekend telling me about this little restaurant out in the middle of boondocky nowhere who thought it was really cool to put a webcam in the dining room and then broadcast that live on the internet. And he starts freaking out. He knows a little local place, and he says, here's the thing. A lot of those people that are in that little local place, and especially sitting in the dark corners, probably aren't supposed to be there. And now they're live online for anyone to see and get them busted for doing something that, victimless crime, probably. Who knows? I'm not going to speak for the dining room, but you know what I'm saying? Like, where did you give the rights? Did you walk into that restaurant and sign a release agreement to allow your picture to be broadcast across the internet? Because I think that that's required, if I'm not mistaken. I know when I was doing marketing stuff for the company that I worked for, and we wanted to do some sort of press release for a customer that we did a huge install for, or, I wanted to make a case study slick. We talked about that, all these tech billionaires, tech companies. That's how they're rolling this out now for 21st century medicine. Get rid of the FDA. Launch the 21st Century Cures Act. Try this mad science gone mad medicine. And anyone who's willing to step right up. And if it's successful, you write a case study. And that's how you get the buy-in from a skeptical public. But before I wrote a case study, before I used any photographs or any type of information that could give away potentially who that company is, even if I didn't use the name, I had to get them to sign a release form. That was absolutely legally required. So anyway, Google also has their facial recognition. Like I said, as we have the Internet of Things rolling out here, it's going to be very difficult for you to get away from the machine, to get away from being surveilled. Facial recognition is just the very, very beginning. We were reading about the Brain Project, the Brain Initiative, and we saw some stories last week about brain scanning getting extremely, extremely good as part of this Connectome project. And they are able to now create these artificial synapses that might be able to allow supercomputers to mimic the human brain. We also read about them using DNA to create these new little combination electronic, biological synapses that they can use to research the way synapses work. They can use them to build devices. They have this new 3D printing technology that'll allow them to put sensors on everything, they said. They are using it in cell phones right now to do all these fancy antennas, but they said literally they could use it to put sensors and make sensors out of everything. How long is it going to be before they're 3D printing these new little synaptic transistors made out of DNA, where you'll have artificial intelligence on an antenna built into everything? They said one of the big things, of course, is going to be for wearable computing, and we know Project Jacquard was a project of DARPA and that Regina Duggan, who then took it over to Google, and Google now partnered with Levi's, and they're about ready to launch the first wearable computing devices, clothing. I think it was a jean jacket. But put on a seatbelt, because we have Project Verily, the division of Alphabet, formerly known as Google, that's working in the life sciences division. We have good old Tommy Insel, the former director of the National Institute of Mental Health, who's gone over there, and he's going to help cure mental disease utilizing the Internet of Things. Last week, we read about a contact lens that Google has out. Of course, they rolled this out as phase 2 of the Google Glass, except now this is going to be able to diagnose and cure you of things such as diabetes. It could take real-time readings of your glucose from your eyeball and then give you drugs through your eyeball. But one of the things we discovered is that they've been doing new research into the way humans make decisions, whether good decisions or bad decisions. And they've discovered that that decision-making process happens in that orbital cortex right behind the eyeball, which happens to be direct connected via the optic nerve. And I've warned you guys from the very beginning, don't let Google put anything in your eyeball, because once you get it in your eyeball, they got direct connect to the brain. Well, if you put something in your eyeball that can read your orbital cortex, that will give them direct access to your decision-making processes, putting things like your brain onto the Internet of Things. And like I said, as we know now that Tommy Insel has gone to work for Mad Science Gone Mad at Google, we got Ray Kurzweil and good old Regina Duggan and DARPA Dan over at Google working directly with the White House. Directly, who do we just have? I don't remember if it was the Google dude or if it was the Amazon dude. I think it was the Google dude who went to go work for the Pentagon now on some side project. Guys, this is so beyond evil. This control grid is locking in on us with this 21st century precision medicine. And it is being sold to the American public as this great new world of technology that's going to make your life easier and wonderful, and it's going to make you live forever, and we're going to reduce the cost of everything, and it's going to cure climate change, and we'll be able to monitor and make sure that lunatics don't get out there with guns. Smart guns are coming. It's my prediction. And they'll fire air puff balls. Well, very last thing we read about on Friday of a week ago was tapping emotions with electronic tattoos. And this is a creation out of Tel Aviv University. We've read about a whole bunch of neurological discoveries coming out of Tel Aviv. We also read about a partnership between a lot of the Israeli neuroscience firms and the American firms. Well, this echoes good old Regina Duggan at DARPA talking about these new electronic tattoos. Yes. Out of Tel Aviv University, they have created an electronic tattoo that can read your emotions, collecting information about a patient's, of course, it's all done in the name of medicine. All of it is. A patient's psychological condition ordinarily involves a procedure called electromyography, but this isn't always the most pleasant of experiences. But don't worry about it, because we're going to make it easy. A new electronic tattoo promises a different approach. Like I said Friday, electronic tattoos coming out of Israel seems like quite the oxymoron. I think I'd be looking at that, Israelis. Like, who are these people? The electromyography involves recording electrical signals through the skin, and this involves an application of a cold, sticky gel. Yeah, that KY jelly. An application of the chill gel is necessary to enable electrical connectivity, and this test is used as diagnostic tools for identifying neuromuscular diseases or as a research tool for studying kinesiology, which is the science of human body movement. And, you know, we discussed that on Friday as well. Microsoft's new biometric authentication that they've been talking about goes way beyond biometrics. It goes beyond voice recognition, facial recognition, fingerprint recognition. Fingerprint keyboards have been around since I was a tech. That was part of like this little keypad mouse roller ball thing with a little fingerprint scanner. You had them on keyboards and stuff. They were a big thing back in the late 90s, early 2000s. It kind of went by the wayside. But Microsoft now has been looking at behavioral patterns, like how you click your mouse or how you sit in your chair, how you position yourself or turn your head every time you type. We all have these little tells that put together in a puzzle, in a profile, because they're profiling us. Don't think they're not. They're profiling you every day, everywhere you go, everything you do. It's being bag tagged and profiled and put into a database. They're going to profile you. So now all you got to do is sit in your chair, wave your hands. It'll be like that magic wand that Regina Duggan talked about, except it's just being you that makes you the password. Well, interestingly enough, this is some of the same technologies that they're basing their studies upon for this new electronic tattoo. There's been a new advancement out of Tel Aviv University, and this is a type of a skin electrode where a flat structure resembles a temporary skin tattoo. And the advantage, of course, besides being more pleasant for the patient, is that it allows the patient to go about their day unhindered. This new skin patch contains tiny carbon electrodes embedded within an adhesive surface, and it collects data related to muscle condition, and this data can be stored for several hours. It was created by an advanced bioprinting machine where the most important step is replicating the topography at a nanoscale. So, yeah, we talked about that. So they're bioprinting at a nanoscale now. And trials have been undertaken to assess the muscle activity of patients who are suffering from neurodegenerative diseases. And, we got this whole epidemic now of Alzheimer's and brain-wasting diseases and Parkinson's. And, oh, my God. But, wow, isn't that a great pool of guinea pigs, too, that are going to need some sort of new 21st century science to be functional again. But it says aside for collecting physiological data, this electronic tattoo has related areas of scientific interest, and that would be the mapping of emotions. They already have cameras that can read emotions. They have these new little AI robot pals that are going to be your new best friend. They're still coming. I don't know. The Jibo never came about. I don't know what happened to Jibo, but I'm glad. But I guess there's all kinds of other little squishy robots that are going to try to be your child's best friend, reading them bedtime stories and assessing your mental states. They have that road rage camera that we've talked about a few times. There's a demonstration out there with a video. You can find it where it can tell when you're starting to go into a road rage moment. And the new self-driving car would be able to take over for you because, Johnny, your emotions can't be trusted at the moment. You're getting hot-headed. So let us just alleviate your momentary mental illness until you get all better. Maybe that Google contact lens can give you an injection of something, release a chemical or two, little bit of oxytocin to make you all loving and happy into that eyeball. And we can influence you. It's already gotten to that point, guys. They can influence you psychologically. It's not going to be too much longer before you're going to have these devices. They've already been talking about shape-shifting immune systems and the synthetic gut bacteria that can cure what ails you. It's not going to be too much longer. This is another potential application of this. Besides being able to map your emotions, of course, would be able to assess the alertness of drivers on the road and chart the progress of people recovering from injuries such as a stroke rehabilitation. It also can be used in conjunction with artificial limbs, and it can be used to delve deep into how a person responds to products as how interesting they found it for advertising and marketing. To be able to make them money. Dangling carrots. At present, much of the information collected about new products is based on subjective questionnaires or using photographs and assessing your facial reactions. So this will be able to put it all into a database. And how freaky is this? Well, I one-upped that story, guys. I don't know. I was searching for something this morning, and I found a link that then took me to a story that had a link in it. And I was like, whoa, what is this? Well, check this out. There is a company that is called AI Cure. Now, I've been warning you about their embedded sensors and being able to bag and tag us once we have sensors on everything. Smart homes, smart devices, smart clothing. Your Fitbit watch is going to evolve into full 24/7 surveillance. Tommy Insel going over to Verily, working on smartphone applications to be able to diagnose things such as mental illness through just your voice patterns. Well, listen to this. AI Cure is a real company. The artificial intelligence platform, how it works for the patient. AI Cure's HIPAA-compliant platform uses sophisticated facial recognition and motion sensing software to automate directly observed therapy on smartphones. What? Yeah, wait a minute. This system directly visualizes patient behavior, and unlike Skype, FaceTime, or video dosing, no human review is necessary. The app takes only a few seconds to use, and it reminds the patient of the upcoming dose of medication and then asks the patient to use the imaging power of the smartphone to confirm ingestion. So I guess they are using the camera to prove that you've swallowed your medication. They can also use educational content. There's real-time feedback. There are incentives, all tailored to the patient's needs, and the patient finds the assistive technology easy to use. AI Cure offers a full understanding of patient adherence, meaning whether or not you took your medication, Johnny, without adding to existing workloads, so nobody has to follow that patient. That patient can use the software to prove that they took their medicine, and gives them regular reports that provides quick overviews of adherence, and requests for intervention based on non-adherence or suspicious behaviors are sent to the healthcare provider as direct notifications. Now wait, let's read that again. Requests for intervention based on non-adherence. Non-adherence meaning Johnny didn't take his meds, or Johnny is showing suspicious behavior, are sent as notifications direct to the healthcare provider. And then based on its longitudinal adherence data, they provide predictive trends that can be used to optimize adherence and treatment. So what is that? Oh, that's listed here as predictive analytics, whether or not Johnny is going to continue to be a good boy, or whether or not you need to keep an eye out for Johnny's suspicious behavior. And don't worry about it. It's all HIPAA compliant. All data is encrypted and blurred. And secure communications, including voice over IP and text messaging, are integrated into a dashboard to provide you direct access to your patient. Security features include deep learning methodologies. Now, wait, where did we hear that before? Oh, deep learning as an artificial intelligence, such as the AI projects Google and Microsoft are both working on. Multi-layers of AI that can teach itself. Deep learning methodologies and enhanced surveillance features are used to detect diversion and fraud, including medical tampering, unusual drug interruptions, cheeking and spitting, which would be not swallowing your meds, sticking it in your cheek and then spitting it out, and time on task. Guys, this is Big Brother on steroids for you to take your medication and surveil your suspicious behavior. It's also a flexible platform. It was designed for multiple medications and multiple routes of administration, including oral, sublingual, inhaler, and injection pens. This app and the dashboard can be easily translated and deployed in different languages, and data can be integrated into an existing ePro application. And one of the ways that they want to use it is for population health, monitoring, and intervening with high-risk patients. Eventually, those high-risk patients are going to be those of us who don't drink the Kool-Aid. Those of us who think, who aren't taking our mind-numbing medications that we've been prescribed to cure us of our mental disease called seeking the truth. AI Cure is the first to take advantage of imaging and computing power of smartphones to offer direct visualization of patient behaviors. And unlike self-reported data or approximate measures of adherence that consistently and over or underestimate adherence, AI Cures mimics the gold standard of direct observation by using artificial intelligence on mobile devices. And it will allow them to accurately monitor large patient populations. AI Cure allows the provider to easily monitor large patient populations from a centralized cloud-based dashboard. The provider also can communicate directly with the patient. Hello, Dave. Have you taken your medication this morning? I mean, what is this? How insane is this? The provider can also communicate directly with the patient from the dashboard, and real-time feedback, educational content, and micro incentives can be integrated and tailored based on the population, the therapeutic area, or the level of risk. Now let's take this one step further. So this is talking smartphones. We already see where smartphones are going. They're going to be integrated into our clothing, 3D printed with synthetic DNA little electrode synapses so they can have AI in these small mini nano printed devices that could very easily then be integrated into things such as contact lenses that go into your eyeball and have a direct connection via the optic nerve to that section of the brain that helps you make decisions. Guys, it's pretty damn frightening. All right, so where do we go from here? So thank goodness that that software is HIPAA compliant, but let's go back to January 5th, 2016. I talked about this a whole bunch of times, and I wanted to hit this because it's very important in light of the mass shootings we have had again and all the unrest that is going on. Obama, as part of Sandy Hook, came out and gave his 23 or whatever it was, 35 executive actions. And one that I paid particular attention to at that time was the loosening of HIPAA requirements. And I was very aware of HIPAA back from my days of network engineering because we dealt with hospitals and healthcare scenarios where HIPAA was a requirement. You had to build encryption into the data network so patient information wasn't being transmitted via clear text because you had to respect that privacy bond that patients have always had with their doctor and that they were insured. That was when you spoke to your doctor, through their Hippocratic oath and HIPAA laws, was required to keep that information confidential. Obama went out there and he wanted to get rid of those pesky HIPAA laws that were no longer keeping Americans safe. Because you could potentially have a lunatic, yes, crazy people going to the doctor who might have a gun. And so he had tasked healthcare providers with being the first line of defense in keeping America safe. So if they saw something suspicious, they should be able to say something. Well, article out of Healthcare Informatics, January 5th, 2016, executive action on gun control includes modification to HIPAA. Ding, ding, ding. A new rule which took effect in February of 2016, enables providers to report limited information to the National Background Check System of the FBI about the identities of individuals provided by federal law from owning firearms due to mental health reasons. Oh. The Obama administration on Monday unveiled a number of executive actions on gun control, including an amendment to the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, more affectionately known as HIPAA, to enable mental health providers to more easily disclose information to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. The Department of Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights issued a final rule which takes effect in February, removing legal barriers, preventing states from reporting relevant information to the background check system. The background check system is maintained by the FBI to conduct background checks on people who may be legally disqualified from owning firearms. And HIPAA rules had prohibited mental health providers and HIPAA-covered entities, so at your health insurance company or your doctors or anything like that, hospitals, from reporting to the background check system the identities of individuals subject to the federal mental health prohibitor. Well, these modifications announced better enable the reporting of identities of these individuals to the background check system while continuing to strongly protect individuals' privacy interests. Well, how long do you think it's going to be? Even if I don't even know if it even is with these new laws in effect. If you get on some sort of monitoring device where you're on medication and it sends real-time alerts for non-compliance and surveillance, Johnny, if you're not taking your medication, does that trigger an alert to the background check system that you are a person that maybe today it was someone who maybe shouldn't be because of their mental state able to own a firearm, but tomorrow maybe this should be a person of interest. Maybe this should be someone that we dispatch. I think we actually read something about that, dispatching before there's a disaster. Somebody to go check on that person or to go apprehend that person in a pre-crimey manner. This new modification to HIPAA is carefully and narrowly tailored to preserve the patient-provider relationship and ensure that individuals are not discouraged from seeking voluntary treatment. Who in their right mind, knowing that your doctor is now going to give it up? I mean, this is like having a best friend that turns around and posts all your secrets on fucking Facebook. Who would go tell their doctor anything right now? They are working for the machine. Anyone that you were protected through HIPAA laws has now been given carte blanche, cover their asses, so they can't be sued, to give your secrets to the machine. This new rule applies only to a small subset of HIPAA-covered entities. Oh, phew! That either make the mental health determinations that disqualify individuals from having firearms or are designated by their states to report this information to the NICS and allow such entities to report only limited identifying non-clinical information to the background check system. And great, so they don't need to tell them what med you're on. They don't need to tell them what gun you own. They don't need to tell them anything. They just need to tell them that you are plumb crazy. You are talking like a tinfoil hat wearing lunatic when you came in here. You were talking about government surveillance. You're onto the machine. You were talking about being angry with the way things are going in America, you're talking about things that the news isn't talking about. That makes you a danger to society. So the story comes out now, June 25th, 2016, out of the Scientific American. To diagnose mental illness, just read the brain. Rather than relying on symptoms, scientists are developing a brain circuit first approach to mental health. Although scientists have learned a lot about the brain in the last few decades, approaches to treating mental illness have not kept up, and as neuroscientists learn more about brain circuits, Stanford psychiatrists Amit Eken foresees a time when diagnoses will be based on brain scans rather than symptoms. So you don't even have to be in the future showing symptoms of quote unquote state-defined mental disease, DSM-defined mental disorders. Your brain scan will be giving you away, Johnny. Don't think of anything violent. Don't think of anything scary. Just stay flatlined and they'll never know. This is beyond invasive. Etkin, who will be speaking at the World Economic Forum. Oh, good old Davis. And this new World Economic Forum will be held at the New Champions in Tianjin, China. Ding. And it was June 22nd to June 28th, spoke with Scientific American about his research on the neurological basis of emotional disorders and the future of mental health treatments. The high cost of treating mental illness doesn't get talked about very much. Why is that? Well, he says it's a real interesting issue. These costs of pesky mental illness are not just the care of people who have illnesses, which often starts early in life. Because remember, we looked at all those things that can make us defective humans, even stress, even being poor, drinking beer can damage your DNA and can cause all kinds of issues later in life. But yes, mental illness and illnesses in general can tend to start early in life and continue as a lifelong process. But it also costs a lot to taxpayers and employers in decreased productivity and, of course, insurance costs. And it's a big cost to society in general. So we have to get rid of these people, right? We just got to reduce the cost, people. It's all about you consumers who aren't giving back to the machine. You're costing us money. So we're going to have to come up with ways to take care of you, but do more with less. You don't even need to see a psychiatrist anymore, Johnny. We'll just put the brain reading device, that ECG that you can control your keyboard and mouse with. Look, you can do it no hands, Johnny. How cool is it? Oh, but it's also reading your brain waves. Don't forget about those. They're coming as well. A report that came out recently in Health Affairs showed that spending within our health system in the U.S. is far greater for mental illness than for any other area of medicine, and yet our understanding of these illnesses is incredibly backwards. Treatments are no different than they were 40 years ago, so step right up, 21st century medicine. DNA nanowires, whoop, push button, brain chemicals, so that it feels like a problem that is only getting bigger without an obvious solution. But don't worry about it, because good old Tommy Insel, former director of the Institute of Mental Health, is now at Google's. We're going to fix all this. This is just insane. Nobody sees this coming. This is just all wonderful. It's all going to be done under the covers, so we won't even know we're being surveilled like we are right now. Profiled. It's all about profiling and algorithms. It was not really until about 10 years ago mental health professionals started realizing how little difference we have made. And there's a new fundamental issue about mistakes we've made. And one is that the absence of knowing what causes the illnesses that we are treating. But we just focus on the symptoms, and it's already led us down the wrong path. And I'd have to say for all medicine, really, that is the problem. They focus on symptoms and drugs versus trying to cure where the original issue is, and a lot of times it's biochemical. We found that gut bacteria and having good versus bad gut bacteria is very instrumental to good or bad health. Anyway, what do you see as a path forward? Well, realizing these errors has coincided with the era of imaging, and even more recently with the really exciting focus on individual subject analyses, and that is precision medicine. Is there something about this particular person's brain that allows me to predict something? Well, we read something not too long ago about how people's brain patterns are just as individualistic as fingerprints. And you don't only have your different electrical functions in your brain, but how your brain works and how your patterns work and how you process thoughts are all based upon a collective growth experience throughout your life, based upon your reactions to things, based upon your environment in certain situations as you were a child in different developmental stages. You also have external influences that can influence the different frequencies that your brain work on, including emotional input, musical input, visual input, auditory input, can all influence those brain circuits and those chemicals. Back to the story. So he says, is there something about this particular person's brain that will allow me to predict something? Well, I call this is the scientist, the circuits first approach. We understand behavior is essentially underpinned by brain circuits, and that is, there are circuits in the brain that determine certain types of behavior and certain thoughts and certain feelings, and that is probably the most useful way of organizing brain function. If you can start characterizing circuit disruptions for compensatory symptoms at an individual subject level, and then link that to how you provide interventions, you could then get away completely from diagnoses, and you can intervene with brain functions in a directive way. Now, we've looked at the ElectRx program from DARPA, using little electrical zaps near your ear with the vagus nerve and stimulation to be able to influence different brain chemicals. And basically what he's saying is, when they see a defect in your brain signals, they can literally intervene by disrupting signals to compensate for your defect, to then make you all better, Johnny. They can intervene with brain functions in a directed way. Well, how close do you think we are to making diagnoses based on something more tangible than symptoms, the interviewer asks. And he says, well, in the selected pockets that we have the best data within the next 5 to 10 years, he says, and that's really more of a factor of how much we need to show the FDA so we can get approval and then get it into a commercialized product that people can use. Get it out of the lab, we say, and it's in the lab using transcranial magnetic stimulation. But is the consumer product ultimately a pill? And he says, well, that's an interesting question. There's this assumption that medications are either preferred or maybe the best way to go about treating things, and that comes from the history of psychiatry and the rest of medicine. But I am not sure that a pill is going to be the best approach for psychiatry. Washing the brain in a drug that affects many parts of the brain and also many effects of the body is pretty crude and nonspecific. In contrast, our neurostimulation approach has proved that we've gotten a lot better at specificity for our target. And if we set our own bar that the treatment has to work within days or weeks, then we can actually achieve something that's powerful. So I'm not sure there'd be any reason to take medication if you can achieve the same results from stimulation. And before the show ends here, I'm going to try really hard to see if I can get this clip to come up and to connect via Skype. And I know, don't try it, Jewel. But we're going to try it because I really wanted to play this. There's a story that came out, personality prediction program can spot troublemakers. An Israeli startup says it has developed a personality prediction program that can help police and security professionals predict those of you who are going to be troublemakers in the future, including businesses, financial, national, and international news providers.
Is faceception an ingenious way to increase public safety or an incursion into our civil liberties? The former, say its makers. The Israeli startup says it can isolate human character traits in faces captured by photograph or video. It says it can distinguish about 20 different personality groups, ranging from champion poker players to crime suspects.
We know with high level of accuracy your personality ingredients, behavior, potential, and so we can have a profile about someone as individual, and the same we can do about the crowd. Say,
personality profiles through your face, okay? Through your face. Let's see if we can turn this back on again. Come on, buddy. I don't know.
It's number 8. There is too much people that potentially can be terrorists.
Faceception won't say how the algorithm works, except that it somehow gleans genetic information that lies within facial expressions. The firm insists it has no interest in retaining collected data and that the system disregards racial profiling. This security expert isn't convinced that's enough.
Certainly investment in technologies that enable to monitor an individual and actually to assess certain traits or certain attributes about the individual in the open space, open surveillance and monitoring capabilities, which kind of like put in risk private freedoms that we used to enjoy, like the freedom of privacy, like the freedom of communication that we used to enjoy. And now the technology certainly changes the balance.
Yeah, the freedoms that we used to enjoy. Being able to talk to our friends in public and not be called a terrorist. All right, guys, make sure you stick around. Mr. Kevin Blanche is up live next. Lots of live radio tonight. All right, I'll